to see you all.
Hi everyone. Thanks a lot for joining. First of all, I saw you guys sent a lot of questions, so rest assured that we will cover them as much as we can. I think there are over 100 and something questions, so it will be difficult to cover all of them, but we'll do our best to discuss as much as we can. So very good to meet you. First of all, my name is Alfonso. I'm going to be the guest speaker of this event, and I'm here with my colleague Igor, who's going to be moderating and also taking into account your comments on the chat and your potential questions, so we can have a very engaging discussion.
Exactly. Yeah. So guys, please don't forget to write your questions to make it more impactful and interesting for all. Fantastic.
Very good. Just a short introduction of, first of all, what's the reason why we did this meeting, right? There is reason, right? So we wanted to discuss this topic because it's something that we actually have received a lot of interest from different people in our audience that is interested actually in either setting up a business or actually joining a Big Four firm. Big Four accounting firms, as they're known, they're actually the largest network firms in the world. They operate in hundreds of countries, obviously with revenues of in the billions. So they're very, very big corporates. And we wanted to link, okay, how can you use the experience of a Big Four company into actually building your own startup, which is what I did myself, and hopefully I can share my experience. So first of all, before we start, if anyone is interested in learning a little bit more about what it is to work for a Big Four, or what it is to set up an e-commerce agency, or actually any startup whatsoever, please feel free to put it in the chat. The sort of questions that are really interesting. We've already received some of them, but we're always happy to discuss. So very good. Let's give it a start. What do you think?
Yes, exactly. So Alfonso, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? So you obviously worked for both Deloitte, and now you're running your own agency. And prior to that, you've graduated from Loughborough University. Could you just tell us a little bit about your journey and how you came to successes that you have today?
Absolutely, Igor. Thanks for asking. So I won't take too long to talk about myself, but just a short background on where I come from. So I graduated from a top United Kingdom university, which is called Loughborough University. Actually, it's a university known for the sports and actually business as well. It's one of the top universities in the UK for business and sports. So as a sport enthusiast myself, I decided to go to Loughborough. I graduated, and upon graduation, I joined Deloitte. I was lucky enough to be elected the one student in that year to go into in a full-time job with Deloitte Switzerland, actually here in Switzerland where I'm based. So I was lucky to join their consulting team, and I was actually involved in different projects which I'll discuss later on. Fantastic. So after a couple of years at Deloitte, what I did is I decided to use the skills that I learned in this corporation to actually start a business, right? Because sometimes when you set up your own ideas and you want to bring your concepts to life and to life, it brings a deeper purpose, a deeper interest. It makes you excited about what you're doing. So that's what I decided to do, and now I'm working, or I'm sort of managing an e-commerce agency that is one of the leading agencies here in Europe. We're working with more than 80 clients since a couple of years. So we're actually pretty happy with what we're doing, and we're looking forward to sharing more about it later on.
Fantastic. Alfonso, so we have a question that somebody asked, which would be very good for you to answer, which is asking you, what is your best achievements, right? And can you specifically share some tips on how to get some promotions, win clients, and so forth, how to get those achievements?
All right. Okay. Very, very difficult question to answer, right? Because an achievement can be from a personal point of view, from a career point of view, but then I'll take it just from a career point of view, right? Because here we're discussing more this sort of matters. I would say, when I was 18 years old, I was never actually the guy who would get the best grades at school or university. And even though I had that background, I was able to manage to get one of the best internships in that year in a company like Deloitte. I think for me that was quite a big milestone in my career, personally speaking. And then what I've done is build on top of that, right? So you need to build momentum in your career, and when you see that you're making some progress, that's when you shouldn't be content, or shouldn't be sort of expecting nothing else can happen for you, right? That's when you need to actually push harder and push yourself as you've never done before. So actually that small win, which back then was a big win, but now actually looking back, it's just a small win. That small win sort of builds up, and you start having more achievements. So for example, another achievement that I had is when I was working at Deloitte, I got promoted after my first year, which again is promotions, they're not so important, let's say. I mean, they don't really mean anything. It's just a title. But the promotion does mean that you are carrying and you're putting the work, and actually the people that you work with are pretty happy with what you're doing. So I got a promotion. And to answer your question on how to get promotions, I would say it's very simple. First of all, before you start the job, you need to set some objectives, and you need to follow those objectives. Now, if you set some objectives and they're very specific, let's say you make 100,000 in revenue for that company in that year, and you achieve that 100,000 in revenue, if then you can show your colleagues, your partner, director, manager that you have achieved that goal, they have no other choice than actually to promote you, because you have met the goals that you were required at the beginning of the year. So that's what I always say. You should always try, and this you can do collaboratively as well with your team. You should always try to set some goals at the start, and then negotiate before you even discuss any promotion. Say, hey, if I achieve those goals, even though they're ambitious, even though maybe they're too simple, I'm gonna get at least up for promotion. So promotion is never sure, but at least you get on the list. So that's what I would recommend.
Very interesting, Alfonso, and it's very insightful to set that expectation from the start, right, before it actually happens, to make sure that the other side actually commits to something. So we have another question before you go to the next slides regarding Deloitte. Just a little bit about curriculum, if you can just share. So the person is asking whether you have to achieve very high GPAs. Or do you have to engage yourself in extracurricular activities in order to be successful finding a job in BIG4, and not just BIG4 but BIG4 tax in Switzerland, which is obviously a very competitive place that you managed to secure. So could you just share a little bit about that and then kind of your journey to get that job?
Yes, good question. Look, I'll be completely honest. It depends, first of all, on which company. There's 4 Big Fours, and which location. So, for example, if you want to apply to Deloitte UK, we know that Deloitte UK actually receives roughly 35,000 applications each year. Now, how does the application process work? Now, there is an automatic screening system that sees your CV, looks at your grades, and if you're not meeting the expectations, then you're from the beginning, you're screened out. So you don't even get the chance to have an interview. You don't even get the chance to show your skills on a test. So you actually have to meet certain thresholds, right? So Deloitte UK, Deloitte US, definitely yes. GPAs and grades are very, very important. Now, when it comes to other locations, it might not be so important. So in my case, for example, in Deloitte, Switzerland, even though at university I did get good grades, at school I didn't, right? So I need to make a distinction about that. But I didn't get accepted because of my grades. What I got accepted from is from the experience and the motivation that I was able to translate during the interview. So I was involved in a lot of different projects at university. I was having my own sort of NGO, if you can call it that way, social club. I was doing a lot of sports, which, by the way, companies love people who do sports because they're people who are consistent and very responsible and hardworking, right? So I think sports is definitely one that you should definitely consider. But you gotta find a way. If you don't have the GPA, if you don't have the grades, you gotta find a way to, still be able to show something else, that you are doing other work, that, okay, maybe you're not getting the best grades, but that's because you're spending time on other projects. And of course, you won't get the same grades as someone who is, spending 20 hours studying because you're having a business, you're having a small organization, you're having a small project. So you need to consider all these things. But I would say for certain locations, yes, GPA is definitely required. For other locations, I think you can find other ways to work around it. I hope that answered my question. Sorry for going a little bit too long.
That's very interesting, and thank you for driving this distinction. So Alfonso, would you be so kind to just share with us kind of the projects that you work with in Deloitte, and what are the sort of skills that you had to utilize to be successful in them?
Absolutely, I'll be very happy to do so. I'll keep it short because I did get actually involved in quite a lot of different projects, but here I mentioned just a few of them, which I think definitely sort of changed my mindset around Big Four accounting firms, and actually introduced me into the world of potentially business development and actually my own business. The first project I got involved in, which was very interesting, was an RFP for a large Swiss client. Obviously, I'm not going to say the client because that's confidential. Whoever doesn't know what an RFP is, it's a request for a proposal. So the way accounting firms and these Big Four firms work usually is they have certain contracts with clients, let's say 3, 4, 5 years. Now, at the end of those contracts, after those 4 or 5 years, they need to renew the contract or find another service provider. In essence, Deloitte, PwC, or KPMG in most cases, but sometimes actually other companies as well. So what we did is actually, when I joined Deloitte, we were having, we had one of this, obviously Deloitte has some of the biggest clients in the world. And in this case, we had a big client from Switzerland. And the year I joined, the contract was ending after, I believe, 6 years. Now, it was a very, very tough negotiation, right? Because you had to discuss why your services are better than the other competitors. So then you're starting to see, hey, how can I sell my services better? How can I be competitive on the pricing? But actually, interestingly enough, we were not competitive on the pricing. We were the most expensive service provider in Switzerland for this specific client. So you got to find a way to, hey, how can you sell your services better? How can you market yourself? How can you structure the processes with that client? And that's a project that I really enjoyed. And I was actually an analyst, and I was managing some parts of that project. So that was a very big responsibility that was put upon me, and I'm very happy to have done it. The second experience, and maybe I'll go very quick on this one. I was also the main point of contact for one of our main clients as well. What I mean by main point of contact is I was the contact coordinating all the services, taking the requests from the client and forwarding them to the specific team that would actually do the work. So I was basically the intermediary between what the client wanted to achieve and how Deloitte could achieve that for the client. So that was also very interesting, because later on, as I'll speak, in my agency, most of the things that I do is actually coordinating projects. So you need to be able to get a project from start to finish. You need to be able to assemble the right team around you. And these are all skills that I learned with this project. Igor, are you still with us?
Yes, of course I am. That's very great, Alfonso. Thank you so much for sharing those key insights. We actually have another question from Farhud Koziev, who's saying that he's actually currently working in Big Four consulting as well. But you were obviously working there before, and he says that he would like for you to elaborate more on the experience you had in Deloitte. Okay, and specifically, he's interested in the opportunities in consulting industries. And I think this goes quite succinct with another question that we had previously, where the person is asking, what do you think about the general trend for consultancy and where it's going? If you could just expand on that, Alfonso.
Absolutely. Well, it's a very open-ended question and also a very long one. I'll try to remember everything you mentioned. The first part of the question is, what was my experience at Deloitte, right? If I remember correctly, my experience was actually amazing, but I found that, to a certain extent, after some years, I had to move on and find something else. So I was, imagine you graduate from university, right? You graduate in business with a very good grade, and you join as of graduating, you join a top company. You're earning very good salary as well in Switzerland. So of course you're very excited, right? It's a unique opportunity for you, and you cannot let it down. So I was like a kid, going into the office and meeting everyone, and sort of with always an open mind to learn as much as I could. So for me that was incredible. That was an opportunity to learn from the biggest experts in the industry. So I always took it, in the way that I'm just absorbing as much as I could. So I know nothing, and I'm going to a company that knows everything. So the way I engage on it is I'm just like in Spanish we say like a bread, like absorbing all the liquid and everything as much as we can to then potentially apply it for yourself. So my experience was great. On the downside, though, there are some ups and downs about Big Four work. I would say a big advantage, which I'll discuss briefly, is the opportunities it gives you for your career, as well as your personal branding, right? On the negative side, it is a lot of work. It is a lot of stress sometimes, and the work sometimes is not as interesting as it looks. So yes, we can get involved in projects like the RFP, which are very interesting, very engaging, but there is another side of this job, right? Nothing's perfect. So there is a part of the job which is not so interesting. And if you do it on a consistent basis for 9-10 hours a day, then after 4 years, you get to a point where you're like, hey, I cannot do this anymore. And that's what happened to me. Now, on the second part of the question, which was talking about the way the trend around consulting companies.
And opportunities in general. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would say, if I'm being completely honest with myself, I would have not changed anything about what I did. So for me, joining a consulting company was learning about being a good employee, also a good leader, a good critical thinker, and a good, overall a better individual. So for me, actually joining a consulting company, and consulting companies are known for being challenging, but also being interesting, because you can learn from experts in their industry. I mean, that's why they're consultants. They consult on a specific topic. They consult companies on how to improve their strategies. They consult companies on how to lower their taxation basis. They consult companies on how to be compliant with their auditing. So these are all things that, these service providers are helping those big corporates, because those big corporates need them. And that's when you're realizing actually consultants, I mean, it's a very, very interesting job, especially if you then want to, be self-employed and, provide your expertise as your own entity.
That's very interesting, Alfonso. Thank you for sharing that, insights into how you feel about the trends of consulting. So could you just share a little bit more about, what it means, why are the Big Four so successful? What have you learned from the Big Four company and have managed to, now apply it to your own agency?
Very good question, Igor. I think it transitions very well to my next slide, even though I guess, we haven't actually prepared for this. So this is completely out of the blue. Look, I noted down here a few topics. So I said Deloitte is equal to 1, financial excellence, 2, market leadership, and 3, a culture of innovation. So these are 3, and I hadn't picked those 3 specifically for one reason. The first reason, financial excellence. What does financial excellence means? Right. Financial excellence means you are knowing, or at any point you're keeping track of how much your company is returning, not only in terms of profit, in terms of revenue, in terms of costs, but also in terms of cost of time, in terms of return on investment on the employees, in terms of time and resource allocation. So Deloitte is a company that at any second is knowing whether an employee is profitable or not. Now, yes, you might think that that's crazy, right? That's like almost
Big Brother.
Yeah, exactly, Big Brother. Exactly, you took it from my mouth. So that's literally Big Brother, and it is. Now, does it have a benefit? Yes, it absolutely does for the company. And I also believe it has for the employees as well. The employees, from a very early stage in their careers, they are pushed and they are supported to be mindful of their finances. In essence, to be mindful of how much they're costing the business. Now, I think that's amazing. Like, I was 19 years old, 18 years old, whatever. And I come from university where, all these lecturers are talking about CSR and are talking about marketing and are talking about like all these topics. And now I come into the company and the company says, fuck CSR, fuck all that. I want to know how much you're costing to my business. I want to know if you're being profitable or not. I want to know if I would fire you the next month because you're not being profitable, because you don't have enough chargeable work. So financial excellence definitely is one that Deloitte and I believe all the Big Four companies have in common. And I think that makes them unique. The second one is, sorry, Igor, please go ahead.
No. Continue, please. The second point, the market leadership.
Market leadership. Now I go faster because I'm going into rumbles a little bit too much. Market leadership. Now, these companies work with the biggest clients, so that's it. Because we work with the biggest clients, we need to provide the best services out there. We need to keep a standard of quality. Now, if from a very young age of an individual working in these companies is forced to keep that standard of quality consistently, then you're building something unique in that person. That individual is now going to be able to provide a very good quality of work for their entire career. He's going to be very attentive to detail. He's going to be incredibly focused on quality, focused on consistency, right? Market leadership, ensuring that the best services are always provided for the best clients. And these companies, they are the most expensive most of the time, but that cost actually comes as well with a benefit of the amount of quality and also scale of the services. So, for example, a company that is a smaller company, startup, might not need Deloitte so much as a company as big as a big corporate with billions of sales. Why? Because Deloitte is able to manage those billions in sales, those complex HR processes, those complex sales processes, those complex strategic matters of that company. Deloitte is able to manage that at scale. So that's the market leadership. The third one, culture of innovation, basically is a company that is always looking to change. And I never really believed that until I saw it with my own eyes. And it's true. Sometimes you can have a meeting with a partner and you tell, hey, I think this should be done differently. He's going to listen to you. I don't know if he's going to be implemented in the short term, but he's always going to be listening to you. Why? Because they're always looking to adapt and improve. And I think that's definitely something that I use myself later on in my career and in my business.
Okay, it's great. So those were the key things that you have learned from Deloitte, right? And that really has changed the way that you see business. Is that right?
Yes. And I use a very strange vector. What this vector means is the financial excellence, market leadership, and culture of innovation have actually built who I am as an individual now. I am someone who works very hard, who is mindful of whether or not I'm bringing money to my business. I'm someone who is able to provide a good quality of work. Most of the time, I'm not perfect, of course, and sometimes perfection is even harming to a business, right? So sometimes you need to be mindful of that. But overall, I provide a good standard of work and a culture of innovation. I'm always looking for new ideas and concepts, and that's really I think the person that Deloitte has built to an extent, of course.
Great. And how does this translate, Alfonso, to your job now as the owner of World Ecom? How and why?
How and why? So it was all a transition. Nothing happens just from one day. Well, yeah, everything happens from one day to the other, but the time it takes to go from point A to point B, that can take some time. So the transition from being an employee of Deloitte to actually managing my own agency took a while, took some time. And actually that time was the most difficult one, right? Because you have to sort of take, you're doing two jobs at the same time. So you need to be able to prioritize, to manage your time, to be much more efficient. Now, you still have that very difficult Deloitte job, and now you're even adding to it a very difficult business, which 95% of businesses fail, and that's for a reason, because it's not easy to compete in the market. So now we have to, you have to engage with those two concepts. Why did I want to transition from Deloitte? Well, the first thing, and I'm putting here, I've never really fit in with the corporate culture, and I'm not going to say that Deloitte is the most corporate out of them, because I don't believe so. I think PwC is the one. No. So I never really fit in with the corporate culture. And what do I mean by that is sometimes the corporate culture is too hierarchical, right? It's not flat. And when it's hierarchical, at the end of the day, you're limiting the amount of engagement, the amount of involvement that you can have in that specific business. And that didn't really fit with me. I wanted to do a little bit more. I wanted to do something else. Deeper and wider purpose. With your own business, you can make more money. Everyone knows that. But what I mean by a deeper and a wider purpose is actually you can use your skills for something better than just having your manager be happy with you. You can use the skills to better society. You can use the skills to help companies. You can use the skills to help individuals. So that for me was a bigger purpose. Now you're working directly with the client, directly with the person who's involved. And usually also, because Deloitte mainly works with big corporates, now you can also work with the smaller players, right? So that a little bit democratizing what I know already and how to share that knowledge.
That's great. Alfonso, you mentioned that because of the hierarchical structure of the big corporates, sometimes it's harder to have a higher scope of involvement, right? So there was a couple of questions, and one specifically that was asking regarding the promotional aspect of Big4. Mm-hmm. So the question goes: many people tell me that it takes about 5 years to be promoted to a much higher position in Big4. Is it true? And is there no way to be promoted faster?
No, I think that's definitely not true. Yes, there are certain limits. You're not going to go to partner in 1 year. I mean, everything is possible, but no, it's not realistic, right? Maybe you can be Elon Musk and you can, build an entire business within Deloitte, and maybe then you're promoted, but that doesn't really happen. Now, in terms of the 5-year rule, that is not really true. So even though, yes, there are hierarchies, it is a meritocracy. Is that the right word, meritocracy? So it means that, if you really work and you provide a better value, a better service than your colleagues, it doesn't matter if the colleague is a senior consultant and you're a consultant. If you're already in manager level, you will be promoted. That's the way I believe. And I see people who have stayed in my time at Deloitte. I've seen people who have stayed in the same position for 4 or 5 years, and I've seen people that in those 4 or 5 years have gone 2, 3, 4 positions ahead. So I'm not going to say that's true, because it's not true, the 5 years. And I think you can definitely merit, or you can definitely work your way up if that's what you want.
Okay. So one of the things that you mentioned, and obviously with the slide as well, Alfonso, is that you don't regret working in Deloitte, and you appreciate that was your path. There is a lot of people that are listening to us here, Alfonso, which currently not working in Deloitte and really want to, actually. And they're asking some questions. Specifically, they're asking what backgrounds. We had a question about the backgrounds, but they're asking if academic background is helpful for Deloitte in general. I think you kind of answered that with the GPA, but just coming back to that, what do you think was the main reason for you actually being hired, and to reiterate that point for the person?
Why was the main reason I got hired? Yes, academics are important. Again, they are important. I'm not going to say they are essential, but they are very important. And in certain regions, as I mentioned in the UK, for example, if you don't have a minimum threshold, you just won't get passed, because no one is actually going to speak to you. These companies have, as I said, thousands of applications per year, and those hiring processes are automatic, are based on AI, are based on other tools. So you won't actually get to get an interview with anyone if you don't meet the necessary requirements. That's the first thing. Now, how did I get hired? I'm not sure, first of all. But if I had to make an assumption, I would say it's just because I was really confident in the interview, and I was able to translate what I saw in my involvement. So I told them that I would work hard. I told them that my goal was to achieve this and this other thing for the company. I told them very specific goals that I had myself set forth, and potentially that's something they liked. That's the way I approached them, and that's the way it turned out. I also I always do, and everything that I do, I really work hard for every project that I get myself involved in. For this interview, I also worked hard. So I researched the company, I researched the job very well. So if they had to ask me some questions, I had the answers. So if I had to, sorry, please.
Yeah. And so if I can ask specifically, the question was, are you required to have financial accounting or economics background for this for academia, or did you have any of those backgrounds, or is that not really required?
No, I actually come from a generic business background. What the course that people say, hey, you don't know what you're doing, so you do business. You're stupid, so you do business. You don't know what you want to do, you do business. So that's what I did. I did business, and I got the job. So I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true, but it's true that there are certain career paths that will help you more than others. So I'm sorry for the people who study art or who do painting, but probably someone who studies art is not going to get a job at Deloitte. However, everything's possible, I would say. And I didn't mean to disrespect anyone, by the way. It's just a joke.
Makes sense. So how how does this correlate? The experience that you had in Deloitte to the hard skills and soft skills that you had from it, and how do those hard and soft skills that you've gained from Deloitte, correspond to your current things that you use in your day-to-day at World Ecom?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. In various ways, and I'll cover them briefly. I think the most important one, if I had to choose one out of all the ones that I chose, would be team and client management. Now, when you join these big four companies, what they tell you is you are the driver of your own career, and that actually is very, very true. You can be a leader or you can be just a follower. I decided to be a leader, and I decided to actually learn, okay, how do managers manage people? How do partners manage an entire engagement with a client? And how to do account management, how to manage the relationships with clients, how to keep them attracted to your services. Again, it's always a competitive market. Do you think these big companies don't get messages every single day from other competitors saying, hey, I can provide you a service for 10% discount? Why would they not go for them? That's your job, really, as a service provider, is to ensure that client stays with you for as long as possible. So that for me was very interesting. And I'm going to reference one person specifically. He was called Jeff. He was a partner of Deloitte, and he was just incredible. The way he approached clients, the way he spoke to them, the way he always provided them value, right? Even if it was as an investment, even if it was for free, he did it because the return on investment is very high, right? He might take just 15 of his time, very valuable time, right? 1 hour of his time would be maybe 2,000-3,000 euros. So it's not less. It's not very little, right? It's something. But he would take an extra 15 to 20 minutes to explain something to a client for free, because that would give the client a lot of value that then would reflect on whether we would keep that client or not. So team and client management is one that I believe is key, especially if you want to build your business. So here I'm talking about the B2B, right? I set up an agency, an e-commerce agency. So first of all, we need to make a distinction what a B2B, B2C is. On the B2B end, and the way that we sell high ticket, meaning we sell services for quite a large amount of money, depending on the service, but they're usually more than 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 euros per service. So then you're not selling a product, you're selling a service. Now, what is the problem of a service? Is that you're not going to be able to sell millions of services. You can only scale to an extent. You can only scale to a certain amount. What does that mean? Is you need to, first of all, find good clients that are well-paying. And second of all, you need to keep those clients, because the cost of customer acquisition, the cost of lead acquisition is incredibly high in B2B compared to B2C. So client management is absolutely essential, absolutely essential. I'm going to just mention one more because I think I'm talking way too much and we don't have much time. Project planning and building lean processes. What does it mean? I took the experience from Deloitte to see, okay, how do they manage the finances? How do they manage each of the engagements? How do they manage the client relationships? And everything is written, They have a thing, which I don't remember the name at the moment, but they have a thing where each client actually has a very detailed process outlook. Very, very detailed, but going into the details you cannot even imagine. For example, how many emails you need to send them, how many meetings you need to have per week, who is sending them the emails? Is it a senior consultant, the consultant, etc.? So all these processes are very detailed, written down, so that whenever you onboard a new employee, he's gonna exactly know what he needs to do. But more than that, it allows you to really be efficient on your processes and on your operations. And that is something that I think I still need to improve, first of all, but it's something that I really trying to implement as much as I can in my agency, because at the end of the day, if you don't have lean processes, if you don't know how much a client costs, if you don't know how much you can make out of a client, if you don't know who is engaged in the communications with that client, what is the conflict process with that client, what is the escalation process? If you don't know these details, then you're bound to fail. That's as simple as that. So project planning and building lean processes, that's another one that I would think is very important, and I've applied myself in my business.
Very interesting. Alfonso, so we actually have a question which is more specific to do with leadership, right? So the question goes, could you share some of your leadership advice, right? And if you can just also relate it to Deloitte. And then there is a question as well, what department did you work in Deloitte, and how that specific department correlates to your current job, to your current endeavor?
Sure. Very good question, first of all. And I'm not smarter than anyone here. I don't know what a good leader is. That's for me to tell you completely honest. I mean, I'm not here to tell you, hey, I know everything about how to be a leader. What I can tell you is what I would do myself. So what I learned from Deloitte is, first of all, you need to always listen to others' opinions. And that I even saw that it was true. I was a fresh graduate. I was 18, 19 years old, and I had my own ideas on how to run things. So whenever I had those own ideas of mine, I told them to the partners, to directors, and they're always happy to listen to you. And I felt listened to. And I felt that even though most of the time, 90% of the times, those ideas went to the bin. But anyway, 10% of the times, actually, your ideas could actually make a change. So that, I think, for me is good leadership, because you are never, and that's why I started this way, you never know everything. The only thing that you know is that you know nothing. I think Socrates said that, right? So going with that mindset as a leader, I think is the best way, because young people have fresh ideas. Old people have a lot of wisdom that maybe young people don't. People that are from different industries have different perspectives on how things could work. So why not listening to them, right? Even if it's just listening and then taking to the crash, but at least you're listening to them. So I think for me, leadership is taking into account other people's opinions and actually truly considering them as a potential option. That is one leadership character. Another leadership character, and I'll stop here because otherwise I go too long, is you, even though whatever position you are, even if you have your own business, you're working for a company, it doesn't matter. Whichever position you have, you can be a leader in your own sense. Even though your job is just, okay, every single day I need to write meeting notes for this meeting. It doesn't mean you're an employee. You can be a leader because every single time you write those meeting notes, every single time you provide the good service, you provide the good work. So your attitude as a leader is, I'm going to do my work, I'm going to do as best as I can, even though my job is limited, even though I'm not doing so interesting projects, right? You can still be very consistent and very conscious of what you're doing. I think that's another trait of leadership, which is anyone, in whichever position they are, they can be a leader, and they can also motivate others to be leaders.
Yeah, that's great. Alfonso, you touched on the leadership at Deloitte and how the partners have treated you and seniors. There was a question earlier from Victoria. She was asking, was there high expectations from interns? I think you touched on that. So if you could just expand a little bit.
Good question. I'm not so sure. I don't know if they expected a lot from interns or I just expected a lot from myself. I think it might be somewhere in between. Yes, they're expecting a lot from every employee in whatever position you are. It doesn't matter if you're an intern, if you're an analyst, if you're a consultant, senior consultant. They're expecting a lot from you because at the end of the day, you have the capacity to work with governmental organizations. You have the capacity to work with big corporations, big banks, big whatever. So you need to keep a standard of quality. Again, I always come back to the quality, and that's the essence of it. I think they do expect a lot from everyone, but then it is really your choice to either go the extra mile or just do enough, let's say.
Okay, yeah. So it comes back to you, right? How much are you actually willing to put forward? Which actually brings another question that was asked regarding the meritocracy, right? So Javier has Javier Bosch has asked, what was that like? The meritocracy. As an employee, would you say that recognition of a merit is a precondition to motivation, or is rather an award? It's quite an open question, isn't it?
I can tell you from my experience, the way it worked is meritocracy is or the way that the system in these companies works is it's not always so clear who is better or who is worse. So before, what I was saying is you need to set some goals, objectives, and maybe it also depends by industry, right? So Deloitte is very specific. At Deloitte, we need to set the objectives before we start the work. Does it happen in all the companies? I don't think so. So then you need to see, okay, what are those companies not doing to be able to really show that someone who has met their objectives is able to get promoted. And I think that the more transparent you are with these things, the better it is, because then, the more grounds you have to put yourself up for promotion and then really request it. So I think Javier's question is very, very interesting. Also quite difficult to answer. But I would say at Deloitte, there were certain people that were not promoted, and I believe they should have, based on other factors which are not only meritocracy. That's what I think. And I have my own experience. I have a friend who then successfully built a very, very $1 million company in Switzerland, basically doing what Deloitte does. And he was a junior person. So he was a junior person whilst his colleagues were were getting promoted every single year. And in the background, you see this person who's very technical, very smart, who then says to Deloitte, hey, I'm going to go to build my own thing. And then he becomes more successful than any partner in Deloitte. He's earning more than them. So that's the proof that it's not always what you deserve. But I would say if you can set some goals and be very specific, the more easier it is.
Very interesting. So obviously, that person that you referred to there that built a company working in the same field as Deloitte in Switzerland, and also yourself have been quite successful outside of Deloitte, and you obviously used the skills, and you've touched quite significantly on the skills that you had to utilize to be successful. There was a question earlier where a person asked if the skills from Deloitte helped you with getting investments into your startup, and in fact, if you could just expand a little bit on kind of the investments. There was a question earlier. Somebody asked, how do you even start a company, right? How do you, if perhaps you don't have that much funding in the first place, what do you start from? If you could just expand on that, please.
Very good question. And sorry, Igor, I think you were breaking for a bit, so I'm not sure I fully grasp what you said.
Okay.
But first question, no, because my company was always self-funded. We never got to, we never actually asked for investment because we're always self-funded and profitable almost since the beginning. So we didn't actually have to ask for investment. The good thing of an agency, one of the big advantages of setting up an agency is the upfront cost is very, very limited. It's very, very low. That has some advantages and also disadvantages. Of course, the disadvantage is the barriers to entry is also very low. Anyone can actually do it, right? Now the question comes, how do you differentiate yourself from the competitors? That's a separate question. But let's start with just setting up the company and making it something. The upfront costs are very limited. Now, if you're able to have a lean process, and again, I come back to that, a lean process, you're able to know where your money is going. You're not like those companies that are, hey, I'm spending 500,000 euros per month and I don't know what I'm spending it on. That's what's going to bring you to complete failure. If you always know where your money is going and flowing, right? It doesn't have to be going. It can be flowing, transferring from different accounts. It can be, of course, inflow, outflow. If you always know all these inflows, outflows, if you always know your cost centers, your different costs that your business has, then you can really make a profitable business or profitable agency, because it only takes one client. And if you have very lean processes, it only takes a few clients to be profitable, really. If you sell high ticket services, which is what we do, it only takes a few clients to be profitable. Now, of course, those 2 clients, it seems very easy. Hey, 2 clients, I can do that all day. Well, it's not so easy. It's not so easy because, first of all, there are a lot of companies that are doing the same thing. It's not so easy because the services are very expensive. It's not so easy because, especially if you're a startup and you don't have a track record, you cannot show that you have success cases. How can you really compete, right? So then it becomes very difficult. You need to be very creative. But overall, yes, we never got investment. because we never asked for it. We never need it. Why being diluted if we can own 50%, me and my partner, entirely ourselves, and be self-funded and be funded based on the profit that we make? So that's the way I see it.
That's very interesting, Alfonso. So there is a few more questions regarding that, specifically regarding kind of running your own business and how to get it started, right? So for example, I guess the question is, how do you, apart from building a relationship with clients, how do you decide what to offer the market? So, what do you approach the market with, right? Did you conduct the market research, or did you do some R&D before, you went to this industry? And then another question which correlates to this is kind of how similar is your current, your startup to what you were doing at Deloitte? Obviously, Deloitte, you worked in the tax department, and how is it correlated or similar to it? If you could just expand on that, please.
Well, I think maybe I'm an exception, but I didn't really do much market research. And maybe this is good and this is also bad. What we always said, me and my partner, and I think, in hindsight, that was not a bad decision. We wanted to be fast moving. We wanted to be adaptable. So, you can build all the business plans that you want. You can build all the concepts that you want. If you don't test them in real life, you will never see if they're successful or not. It doesn't matter how much research you make until you actually see the market results for yourself. Maybe, you can be in a very congested market. You can provide a product that is being sold by many other companies, but you have one only factor that only your company has, and all those companies go out of business. So you don't know these things, right? So what we said is, hey, first of all, let's set up a business that doesn't require a very big upfront investment like agencies do. And second of all, let's do a service that is niche enough. And yes, of course, we did some market research, but not much, really. If I'm completely honest with you, what we always said is, let's test it out, see if it works. If it doesn't, let's find something else, and it worked. So we always say that this is called MVP, which is more let's get to the not bare minimum, but let's provide a good product that works, and then improve it based on that. Not provide the perfect product from the beginning, because that perfect product you might think that is actually completely irrelevant for the industry. So why spending years investing on a product that you don't even know if it's going to succeed? So MVP is something that I would suggest.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. MVP, guys, this means minimum valuable product. That's a great insight that Alfonso just shared there. Alfonso, there was a question right at the start, which I wanted to keep towards the end once you kind of tell a little bit about your story. But I think it's a very good question. It came from Adelia, right? And she asks, what kind of challenges did you face during your career? Both Deloitte and also World Ecom. If you could just share some of the biggest ones.
Sorry, I think you were breaking for a bit. Do you mean biggest challenges that I faced at Deloitte and also World Ecom, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let me think about that. Actually, I have a presentation on this. At Deloitte, I would say, is joining as the most fresh graduate. Joining in essence as the youngest in the company, the only person who has zero experience. So when you found yourself being in meetings with people who have been working on that for years, for 10, 15 years, who know every single thing that there is to know about that industry or about that service. And then you found yourself there just making notes on your notepad saying, I don't actually know what these guys are talking about. I'm just making notes because I'll then review it at home, and I'll try to make sense of it with whatever on Google. But you have no idea what's going on. So our challenge was really adapting to the fact that you are someone who doesn't know anything about that, and you need to learn so much. You have a lot to learn still. Of course, that is both a challenge, but for me, it was something interesting that I tried to use to my advantage. But yeah, that was definitely a challenge. Another challenge is some deadlines are very tight. So sometimes you need to work a little bit longer to try and ensure that the deadline is met. And I would say that's definitely a challenge as well. Now, in terms of World Ecom, I would say the challenge is every day. Why is that? Because when you set up a business, you don't only think about one thing. You think about millions of things. You think about your accounting, your legal situation, especially if you're a startup and at the beginning don't have enough funds potentially to even hire a service provider, right? You need to do everything in-house. So you need to know how to do marketing in-house. You need to know how to do sales in-house. You need to know how to do targeting in-house. You need to know how to do marketing campaigns in-house. You need to know all these things yourself. So then you find yourself having to build everything from scratch, and having, from being an expert in one field, now you need to be good in every single field. And that's, I think, what entrepreneurs usually are, is they know a little bit about legal, they know a little bit about accounting, just enough to do it themselves. They know a little bit about marketing, a little bit about sales, and every single thing. Operations, of course, very important operations. So they know all these things. But of course, if you're just starting, you need to learn all these things. So that was a big challenge. In this slide that I'm having is the sort of challenge you face with the market. So as a startup, right, you have no track record, you have no clients, you have nothing. So how do you compete? Why would they choose you instead of other e-commerce agencies? And you need to be creative. You need to find better ways of selling. It's called imposter syndrome, right? Imposter syndrome. You will feel a lot of imposter syndrome, right? Because you will have to show the client that you are already in a position that you actually are not. Let's be honest. We all go into the sales meetings with clients saying that we know everything, that we're the best. In theory, we're just a startup that has just launched 1 week ago and has no fucking clue what they're doing. So then, you need to really, I'm not going to say lie, but you need to pretend you're someone else. You need to pretend you are where that client needs you to be. And that is a bit of a risk, of course, because you need to be able to deliver on your promises, but it's something that every entrepreneur needs to get used to. So
that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And that's definitely an insight that people like to people don't usually share, right? To sometimes pretend to be better than you really are. And you touched there that on the fact that you have to have a wide range of skills, right, in operations and everything. A question that we're having here from Mahina is, what's more important, the hard skills or the soft skills? Or the question is it more important to have hard skills, specific ones? Yeah, can you just expand on that?
Very good question. Let me just have a think. So the first part of the question, if I understood it correctly, is what is more difficult to attain, soft or hard skills? Is that right?
Well, I guess the question is more like what's more important for a startup and I guess career as well, to have soft skills or hard skills, and
you need to complement both. I'm gonna give, and this is my opinion. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a business expert or whatever. So I'm just gonna give my opinion on how I see this topic. Now, hard skills are skills you can learn throughout time. Technical skills. You can learn how to use Excel. You can learn how to use some AI tools. You can learn how to do finances. It's theory, right? You can learn theory. Now, soft skills are based on your personality as well, your character. Your character is built when you're very, very young. So it's very difficult to develop it. That's the first thing. Now, yes, you can, of course, develop some soft skills, but because they're actually mixing with a lot of different factors of your personality, of your character, of your situation, of your everything, of your entourage, of your network, I would say those are more difficult and therefore more valuable. And then I'm going to give you another reason. Another reason why I think soft skills are first of all, more challenging to get, and second of all, more valuable, is because the hard skills, you can get someone to do that work for you. So why do you need to know how to do accounting if you are very good at communication? You are good at communicating with clients. You're very good at providing them value. Why do you need to know how to do accounting? Maybe someone else can do accounting and you can focus on what you're good at. And there was a writer an author who spoke about that a lot. He talked about the unique ability circle. And what the unique ability circle talks about is you should focus on what you're good at, because someone else who's good at that other thing, that they can potentially do for you, right? It's always better. I always say that it's always better to be good at something than average at everything. And I think hard skills are more easy to get than soft skills. Soft skills, again, and I'm not a psychologist, but what I heard is the personality traits of your character are built when you were 2 to 7 to 8 years old. And those, even though they adapt, they don't change. They don't change. And that's only what I heard. And I could be entirely wrong. So I think soft skills are definitely more valuable and more difficult to get. Actually, very good question. I really enjoyed answering this question.
Great. Alfonso, I think we're coming towards the end. So we have the final question, which you perhaps could answer quite quickly. So the question, it comes back to, you presenting ideas to your managers and for them to be accepted. And I guess to the clients today, when you present new ideas for World Ecom as well. Apart from providing a sound business plans and financials, what else do you need to do for those ideas to be accepted and for this to be successful? That's a question for Dina.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understood the question, Igor.
So when you present ideas, you talked earlier about presenting ideas to partners. Yeah. How can you do it successfully?
Oh, okay. Well, you need to understand the partner has meetings every single minute. In fact, not only every single minute, but he has overlapping meetings, meaning he has a meeting from 10:30 to 11, and he has another meeting from 10:45 to 11:30. So what I'm trying to say is partners are very, very busy. Now you need to be mindful of that, but they will always find half an hour, 1 hour for you, if it makes sense. Like they will always find time for their employees, and that's the experience that I got. The first thing you need to do is you need to plan in advance. So you will not get a meeting with a partner most probably on the same day. You need to tell him, hey, can we have a meeting in 1-2 weeks? Because then you allow him to plan. Otherwise, he just his calendar is fully booked out. That's what it is. So first of all is planning in advance, and second of all is going into that meeting with a solution-oriented approach. What does a solution-oriented approach means? Is you have considered what the potential downsides of that idea is. You have considered what the potential benefits or advantages of that idea is, and you have assessed as well or evaluated how that idea could improve the business. If you come with those 3 points and you provide very simple, it doesn't have to be a Word document, it doesn't have to be a Figma design. It can be any sort of paper or your ideas clearly in your head. If you come with that idea, and if it makes sense, right? If the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, why not even considering? So that's the way I would do it. First of all, plan in advance. And second of all, come to the meeting with your ideas very clear on what idea you're trying to propose, and what is that going to allow the business to work better.
Alfonso, thank you so much for everything that you shared with us today. It's great stuff. We didn't have time for all the questions, but guys, please do email Alfonso, and we should get back to you. Thank you so much to everyone.
May I just quickly end with this slide? It's going to be 10 seconds, if you don't mind. I think this slide is very, very important for anyone who wants to build a business. In the end, a B2B business, sorry. These are, in my opinion, the only 3 concepts you need to master for your B2B business to work. Number 1 is the sales. You need to master sales. Number 2 is account management. You need to master how you manage your client relationships. And number 3, you need to master how you do upselling with those clients, how you retain those clients, and how you're able to get more, how to provide more value to your existing clients as opposed to finding new ones. I think those 3 concepts for anyone who wants to build a B2B business are more than essential. And I would be happy to cover those in more detail at some other point.